And you, Joe?
Yeah, because Andrew Cox is also on the committee, and so there's four of us: me, Mike, you, and Andrew. So hopefully Andrew will come on.
And I'm here.
Soon.
And I'm here, Joe.
Yeah, hopefully Andrew will come on board, and we have a special guest, a former member, John. Is Christopher, and so he is going to be our technical advisor so that we can get to where we want to get to with our group here. So with that said, let me just open the meeting. And do I have a motion to open our meeting at 6:33, the Government Study Committee?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Betty and second by Mike Dempsey. And Mike, if you would take the notes for us, that would be great.
Sure.
The agenda items for tonight, I'll just read them down the line here. Review of the final version of the town administrative bylaw that was approved by the select board, which, by the way, that was approved last March, almost a year ago. Review of final recommendations by the government study committee. I'm going to show you some recommendations that we submitted at the very end in last March as well. Discussion on any changes or modifications to the bylaw. Also discussion about the division of local services. They're going to be doing a finance study, and discussion on process to develop and deliver a final report to the select board. So what we'll do is, first of all, just to clean up house here, we do have minutes from a meeting all the way back to June 8th of 2021. I won't read all the details, but we had a meeting on Tuesday, the 8th of June. I did send it to everybody. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, the June 8th of 2021?
Joe, I'm not sure if I attended that meeting.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, so I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, and I'll second that, and we vote in the affirmative. I'll say yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. That takes care of that. So let me project on the screen a couple of items. I probably would say this is probably the most important thing that we want to take a peek at. I'm going to put it up on the screen, so just bear with me. And Betty, you can follow along because I dropped off those items to you. So.
Sure. Yep.
So we have the Groveland Town Administrative Bylaw. We have the preamble here, the legal references. This is what was approved by the Board of Selectmen. This version very likely was not exactly the piece that was placed on the town website, because this would have been a final draft with some changes that were made not only by the chief writers and authors of the bylaw, John Osborne and John Christopher, but also we did get a little bit of help from the legal counsel of the town. And we got a lot of help from some really good input from people that were in the town, particularly department heads. So I guess if anybody has any questions, let's kind of hang here for a moment and say, well, is this something we should resubmit? We should, what should we do with this? Should we submit it and say this is still our final, or is there room for additional changes?
Can I make a comment, Joe? I'm sorry, Mike, did Mike want to make a comment?
No. Go ahead. Mike?
Go ahead, John. Yeah, I just think this, but we did this before we decided to go with the 4123A route.
Right.
And I think things have changed a little bit in town as far as, we have we have a finance director bylaw that hopefully will be rescinded. So I think this is still to a degree a work in progress that maybe, since it won't hit town meeting till 2023, we can maybe not change it, but just take a look. And I think that the DOR report may give insight into what we may have to add to this or take out, because we say here that the town administrator is also the chief financial officer. So they may have some recommendations that we haven't thought about, or criticisms. And I think it's still, to a degree, a work in progress based on the fact that we kind of switched horses, so to speak, in midstream at town meeting and went with just a simple adoption of the statute as opposed to the bylaw, with the idea the bylaw would be brought up later after we had some experience with the town administrator actually being on the job.
Well, yeah, there's three things going on. The finance director position does need to be terminated by a special act. And I now know that the Board of Selectmen has voted on that, and they did dispatch that language over to Senator Tarr's office so that he can, snake it through the state process in committee first and have it approved, create a law that will have to be approved in both chambers and then ultimately signed by the governor. So that's really off of our plate. It has been for over a year. That was part of Article 5 in the, Article 4, a warrant number 4 in the town meeting. So that opens up the opportunity now for how Groveland wants to control, for lack of a better word, the town administrator. Do we want to use the Chapter 21, 23A, or do we want to create our own bylaw? And I certainly, I'll open that up for discussion in a few minutes. So I think you're right, because one of the things that was introduced, Betty, recently, I want to bring you up to speed, is that Ruth Rivard has worked really, really hard to bring in an amazing opportunity for our town. And I call it free consulting, but the department, the Division of Local Services is going to come in and do a complete financial review of our process, our, the structure that we have, our financial team, how we run our finances. So John brings up a really good point. Then it would make sense that no way can we finalize anything, because we want to see what the impact would be from that. They might come in with some ideas that would really be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
that would be a bonus for us.
Yeah, and like I said, it's probably, if you look at it, you can hire a consultant to do $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of work, and they're coming in and doing it for free. So
that's good.
What a blessing. Yeah.
No cost.
Mike, any thoughts?
No, I don't think that we need to rush, to approve something. So certainly it's worth waiting and getting it right.
And one of the things that John brought up is something that we had talked about extensively, is that, should we have the blessing of an excellent first town administrator, which we do, and now it's in the form of Rebecca Oldman, why not give that person an opportunity over several months to a year to, work into the position, and then perhaps we can, and almost like dating the system. Let's kind of learn more about what the position entails. Let's shape it. She would have to be very careful in terms of input. She can't be in a position where, we would ask her, hey, what law would you like to be controlled under? That would be a conflict of interest, but certainly her talent and her energy and her advice to the board would be beneficial to perhaps, guide us and give us a kind of pros and cons on both, maybe we should stay under the state law that we're temporarily using and never go to bylaw. Here's the pros and cons. Or maybe we should go to the bylaw and dump the state law, do our own internal bylaw, and here are the pros and cons. So I think that's kind of the thinking, if you will. So.
I think, Joe, in the state law, I look at it, it's Chapter 41, 23A. It really isn't a directive statute in the sense that it outlines what any town administrator hired on it has to do. It simply says, one, you can hire a town administrator and you can delegate to that town administrator any duty or responsibility that a select board has as given to them by state statute and other laws and regulations. So it's really just a bare bones that, yeah, you can hire a town administrator, and whatever you want to give them, as long as it's within your authority that you could do it yourself, you can give it to the town administrator. That's basically what it is. It's a kind of a very vague statute in certain areas as far as really setting forth the duties. It kind of is I'd call it a freelance statute, so to speak.
Yeah, it's almost ad hoc. I know that, and people are passionate. I know that one of the Board of Selectmen members a couple of weeks ago said, we ought to think about taking an ad hoc approach. But I defer to Betty because I think she had a few decades of service to our town in a number of capacities, including. But I think Betty can speak to it, and I'll let her. But I'm not comfortable with seat of the pants, shoot from the hip, ad hoc approaches to anything, especially controlling this position.
Haven't we gotten in trouble in the past by some things that we should have had better control over?
Yeah.
As a Board of Selectmen?
Yeah. Yeah. No, okay.
I think we need to be cautious what we're doing, and I have a great respect for Rebecca and the Board of Selectmen. We're not asking them to give up all authority and control, right?
Right.
And I think that people in town would kind of be disappointed in us if we did that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I don't think we want to create. We don't want to create let me speak for myself. I would hate to see a town administrator position created in such a way that person really has no authority and is just at the service of the Board of Selectmen. And then, politics being what they are. I mean, there are politics and, the influences out there. Now the person becomes subject to the whims and wishes of the political winds in our town. And that's not professional management. The whole idea of our committee was to create a structure similar to the school committee, where the school committee absolutely has nothing to do, cannot reach into any day-to-day operation. That is the purview of the school administration and also the superintendent. So they're in the business of providing guidance and conducting what's called governance, setting the budget and approving the budget. And then you sit back and you let the professionals go in there. And if those professionals are accountable to the board, and if they don't do a good job, they get fired.
And Joe, I think if you really look at this statute, it takes a while. Excuse me, the bylaw. It takes a while to read it. You have to read it a number of times. There's language in there all through it that says the town administrator, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, or the town administrator with the advice and consent of the Board of Selectmen. So they're saying, you do this, but keep us informed, and you have to have our approval in the final analysis. So, but it at least presents a matrix that somebody sitting in that chair as town administrator at least knows where she or he stands with respect to what he's expected to do on a daily basis in this town. And it really puts the selectmen in the position of being policymakers and not having to worry about whether the snow is getting plowed or we have enough fire trucks or, the budgets are funding everything. It's in the end, they're the captain of the ship, but there's a lot of deckhands in the form of the town administrator running the day-to-day business. So I think it strikes a good balance, I think, but there's always room for improvement, always.
And I've read this 6 times over the course of last year or so and worked with you on it. And, the criticism that we have received from certain quarters and, in very, not in a malicious way, but in an expression of concern is, hey, are we giving too much power to this person? And I think the word balance is correct. I think we have a very good balance.
There's no giveaway of power. It's just delegation with the ability to pull it back in a sense. Say we don't, even though we asked you to do this, we don't approve of what you're doing. You have to.
There's no authority that's transferred from the Board of Selectmen to the TA that says it's irrevocable. Now,
No.
you know, we've given away this authority, and boy, if you screw up, we're all in trouble.
And I think that a written bylaw such as this presents the person sitting in the town administrator's position by knowing where they stand, as opposed to an ad hoc approach where a town administrator technically can get into an argument with the Board of Selectmen saying that's not within the scope of my authority because you don't have any authority in the first place to delegate it to me.
The state law can incubate an ad hoc approach with continuous and never-ending interpretation of what my job is and what it's not.
Yeah, I think when Kevin Pecos was here, he said that 4123A was a good approach, but he was essentially saying we should go forward with the bylaw after that. And that's just one person's opinion, but based on his experience.
And you may remember that we felt that it was a good way to, remember, we were going to do a two-step. Step number one, we phase out the finance director position. Number two, we bring in a TA, and not to rush things, but to kind of date the concept. Let's bring the TA in under the Chapter 23A, the state law, as a temporary measure until over the course of a year or two, with a new person first, growing into the position and we figuring out what we want to do, we kind of solidified with our own internal bylaw, which will give a good balance of control between the people represented by the Board of Selectmen and the professional that we put in place to run our day-to-day stuff.
And I think Kevin also pointed out at one meeting that he zoomed into that he felt there was a little bit of a catch-22 between having a finance director bylaw in place and having this bylaw in place, because he didn't feel you could have a town administrator with a written bylaw like this and still have a finance director, because the finance director bylaw says there shall be a finance director. And he felt you couldn't hold two positions at the same time. I kind of disagreed with him, but that was his considered opinion, which, it was well thought out. So I think that's why one of the reasons we took the interim step of we were going to get the TA on board and then rescind the finance director bylaw, and then eventually go to this if that was the will of the selectmen in the town meeting.
That's why, even though I'm a little bit alarmed as to how long it's taken, on the Chapter 4123A, it's so loosey-goosey, for lack of a better word, that we were able to maintain a town administrator with a finance director still on the books without a conflict. But as soon as Senator Tarr gets that through and it ends up being a special act that's approved and signed by the governor, then we're going to be free and clear to put in our own homegrown, customized set of rules as to how to control that position. I think that's what we're talking about here. So.
Yeah.
Betty, any thoughts?
No, I think we started out doing this because we knew there was a lot of confusion and who reported to whom during the day. And, it's taken a while and it'll still take some time to get to where we want to be.
Okay.
I think it's been well thought out.
Good.
And we knew the reasons why we wanted to do it. So,
Mike, your thoughts?
Well, I'm happy that the town has made progress and we actually have a town administrator. So I think that's good. And anything that we do here on will only make the situation better, hopefully.
So what I propose is that instead of doing a final report, which would be probably, hopefully, 1 page, maybe 2 with some bullet points of what we recommend, I think that we should call it an interim report, saying this is where we are now, and we'd like to come back at the pleasure of the board, probably in 2023, to revisit the issue so that we can finalize this bylaw in a way that is pleasing to the board, makes sense, has received some input from the current town administrator within her limited ability to provide comment, and perhaps even to hear from town department heads again. And perhaps we can even expand it again to the public by posting it so that we can position this to bring it to town meeting in 2023 and say, okay, this now is the final. We tweaked it because of the Division of Local Services financial study. We tweaked it because of input from the town administrator, from Board of Selectmen. We tweaked it, and we gave it the time that we without rushing things. So here it is. Here is the final. Do you want to vote on it? Yes or no in 2023? If it gets voted down, we stick with Chapter 4123A. It's really that simple, which we would not recommend. It sounds like, I don't think we would oppose that. We would not be.
Well, I think in a final report we should set out reasons why any type of written bylaw is preferable than just a naked operation of a statute, which really doesn't say anything other than you can hire and delegate. So I think we should probably point out the pitfalls of just operating under the statute. Even if the selectmen don't go to a bylaw, they certainly could take whatever is in here that they feel is appropriate and put it into a book of selectmen regulations or policies for purposes of operation of the town administrative position. If they want to just go that step, I prefer a bylaw, but that's just my nature.
So if I take a look at the appendix, I mean, honestly, if we wanted to put into our interim report in the next week or so, say, okay, this is our interim report, and we're going to recommend, for example, I'm just making this up, the town administrator bylaw has a great appendix. I mean, it is detailed. And the town of Wenham does not have a bylaw, but they have a job description that reads like this to some degree, so that they don't even need a bylaw, because if you take this job description and you marry it to a contract that you negotiate with the town administrator, you can actually operate with just a contract, a job description, and then, as John said, Board of Selectmen regulation saying this is how we're going to run this operation. So that's another. So somewhere between the loosey-goosiness of the 4123A and the defined our own bylaw, there's another thing in between there where we can do it with the combination of contract, what's called Board of Selectmen regulations. Betty, you and I, when we were serving together, you remember we did about 12 or 13 policies. How we govern ourselves, and it was me, you, and Donnie, and then I think we had Bill Dunn on there. So the regulation is kind of like the same concept, that this is an agreed to and voted on by the Board of Selectmen to basically to deliver a specific policy for a specific thing, such as how we want to control the TA. So what would you think about that? And I'm asking everybody here, do you think that the approach of promoting in our interim report this concept of a Board of Selectmen regulation, do you think that should be as a temporary measure, or do you think that might be in place of the bylaw?
I basically, Joe, I like permanency. I think the regulation, it would be good in the interim so people would know exactly where they stand, both the board and the town administrator, as to what's expected. And I think there's language in this appendix, if I'm not, I remember it. It says,
all 19 of them. Yeah.
I think there's something in there. I know John Osborne did a lot of work on this aspect, but it says something about, or in the bylaw itself, any other duties which the Board of Selectmen wish to delegate to the town administrator. So they're just not locked into that 21-point proposal there.
Yeah. So there's going to be a level of discretion.
Never for them to give up any power permanently.
Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we should just stick with the bylaw.
Okay. All right. Discussion on the process to develop and deliver a final report. So would you, without taking a vote? Well, let's take a vote. Can we take a vote on? Can someone make a motion as to if we want to produce what we're calling an interim report, not a final, and then we close our business and we're done? Would anybody like to make a motion that we'd like to deliver an interim report, not a final report, in terms of our recommendations to move forward without delivering a final report and a final bylaw because of the contingencies that we've already discussed? Would anybody like to make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mike, you'll write that out?
Yep.
Do I have a second? Betty, second? All right.
I'll make Mike second to his motion.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. So we'll write an interim report, and we'll list the contingencies as to why we consider it an interim and not a final. And all the things we had talked about, specifically that we want to wait till 2023. We want the position to be worked out. We want to, certainly incorporate potential impactful and helpful suggestions that come out of the Division of Local Services study. I mean, just those three would be helpful.
When will they start that, local services? Have they started anything?
I
or
wish,
are they waiting for us?
No, I wish I knew. I think Ruth Brevard is on top of it. I think it's
okay.
I think it's soon. I don't know for sure, but I think it's soon. So, okay, I think so. The agenda items: review of final version, which we did. Review of final recommendations. Oh, I didn't do that. Let me show you the recommendations that we did do previously. Because it's good to kind of take a peek at those again. Hold on, okay? I'm going to show them to you on the screen. So we put out a memo on March 1st, which would have been a week before the bylaw that I've been projecting was approved. So this was sort of just a kind of some recommendations that we put out. And so let me read them to you. Changes to the draft document subsequent to the BOS presenting on March 1st. And there's some details. And number 3, make some changes. Number 5.1, replace the tribunal with the word panel. So some technical changes that we recommended inside the bylaw, which we ended up adding those, and then eventually it was approved, meaning voted on. And then we also made some recommendations to be taken by the Board of Selectmen, where we felt that, and I'll read this to you because this is really important, to complete the financial leadership team with town administrator. The committee recommendation is to implement a full-time accountant and an assistant treasurer collector, a survey of regional salaries in the $68,000 to $78,000 range for the accountant full-time, and then we have $48,000 to $58,000 range for assistant treasurer full-time. We recommend that the Board of Selectmen complete a financial study that will illustrate the impact on taxpayers, which effectively, what Ruth has pursued is going to be that idea with steroids. So that's a blessing to have the amazing resources available for that coming study. And then I've also projected here the town administrator salary range, full-time accountant again, full-time assistant, treasurer collector again, there's the range. And then the financial study, current employment market conditions. We have learned that the employment pool is very limited, which can lead to unfulfilled positions and or higher salaries for retention. The BOS should consider options for filling positions temporarily and the costs associated with them prior to promoting the town administrative bylaw and the organizational change. The financial study should be composed of 2 parts. Filling of positions as recommended would result in costs, a contingency plan and resultant cost to taxpayers for unfulfilled positions. So what happens now is this recommendation, whether it had anything to do with us or not, I think is going to be done very well with the Division of Local Services. So presentation at town meeting should be led by 1 or 2 BOS members. So here we talk about, well, let me read it. The BOS must be perceived as taking ownership of this proposal and delivered to the town meeting. So this is another recommendation. We would certainly be available to the Board of Selectmen, and I certainly made a presentation at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen, but I did not want anybody at town meeting or anybody in town to say, hey, this is Joe, Mike, Betty's, and John O'Brien, John Osborne and John Christopher's project. No, this is a project, if you will, of the Board of Selectmen. They empowered us, they gave us a charge to produce, this work. So, and I think we did a very good job in positioning it that way. I don't think anybody thought that this was anything but something from the Board of Selectmen. They have wanted a town administrator for several years. And so I think we delivered on that. And then we had another recommendation about Powers and Sullivan and Town Council should receive a copy of this memo, as well as the draft voted on March 8th, since a question about the legality of our recommendations and content of our draft has been called into question, as well as an assertion that our draft constructs a scenario that will expose our town to fraud. Both of these issues should be explicitly addressed by both auditors and town council. We did get some comments from town council. We'd never engaged with Powers and Sullivan, but I think that our final draft that we have today, and even any further iterations of it in 2023 will, I think we've done a good job. And ultimately, it always has to get approval from whatever we create, whether we deliver in 2023 exactly what we've already created with no change, or we make some changes. Ultimately, town council does have to approve the bylaw. So I think we're in good shape. So I wanted to share that with you just because, just a lot of time has gone by. I mean, we worked hard. We met a lot, but my goodness, this has become a 2-year project. We're going on to our 3rd year. It'll be 2.5, 3 years plus by the time we finish it, if we get it over the goal line in 2023. So any final comments or questions or concerns? Did I miss anything?
No, I think we're all set.
Okay. All right. So what I'll do, if with your consent, Betty and Mike, I'm going to get together with John Christopher. What I'll do is I'm going to produce a draft of this interim report based on our conversation tonight. I'll send it to him. I'll work it with him, and then I'll send it to you. And if you object to anything, then what we should do is have a meeting, or if you feel you want to comment on it and work it through a meeting, we will. If I don't get any comments back, that then we'll leave it the way it is, and I'll go ahead and I'll deliver it to the Board of Selectmen, hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so. So again, I'll send you the draft. If you make a comment, say, I think we should have a meeting, I have some concerns, or something like that, then we'll have a meeting. If I don't get any comment from you, Betty, I'll deliver you the copy to your home. If I get, what you don't want to do is send me a message, say, oh, I like this, because then now we're deliberating. I'm going to send it to you. You're only going to say, in your mind, I got to talk to these folks. I'm not comfortable with this. Then we'll call a meeting. But if I don't hear from you within a couple of days, I'm going to go with it. Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds fair. Mm-hmm.
Mike? Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting of the Government Study Committee on February 17th at 7:07?
Make your motion, Joe.
Okay. Motion by Betty. Second. By Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Very good. Thank you again, John. Thanks again.
Thank you, Joe.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
You take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.